Touchdown BC is sponsored by
the Robertson Braun Group, Remax Kelowna. Thinking real estate in Kelowna? Think Blake Robertson, Marlene Braun. For more information, call 250-212-2888 or 250-878-5242.
Touchdown BC is also sponsored by Subway and the Subway Bowl. The Subway Bowl hosts and supports the BC High School Football Championships and amateur football around the province.
Welcome to another episode of Touchdown BC. I'm your host, Adam Kordick. This week we have a great show for you. The BCFC season wrapped up this past weekend, and there were some important games that were played leading into the Cullen Cup playoffs. We will also catch you up on the week that was BC High School football, community ball, and UBC hosted the Manitoba Bisons this weekend in a game that had major implications when it comes to the Canada West standings. Time to get into the action. Time now for the Subway BC High School Football Report. This past weekend marked the second week of conference play, and what a weekend it was. We saw some major upsets along with a couple blowouts. Many teams looked to be playing great football early in the season. Time now to get into the action.
Harry Fox Ravens beat up on WJ Mowat this past Friday in Eastern Conference play. The Ravens were led by Zach Bailey, who had 3 touchdowns, and Jeremy Kankalonga, who rushed for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns, including this highlight reel run. Just wow. Grade 10 DB Jaden Severy added 2 pick sixes en route to the Ravens' 57-0 win over WJ Mowat. Now here are some of the other scores from Eastern Conference play. Mission beats Kelowna, Lord Tweedsmuir takes care of STM, and Centennial took care of Mount Bougere. Now let's take a look at the Eastern Conference standings through 2 games. To the Western Conference we go. Vancouver College gets its first conference win of the season over Belmont. South Delta goes to 2-0 in conference play with a win over Carson Graham. And the Notre Dame Jugglers upset the new West Hayaks. Now let's take a look at the Western Conference standings through 2 games. Abbotsford of AAA taking on Robert Bateman. First quarter, Robert Bateman gets on the board first with a nice hold and nice kick by Charlie May. Second quarter now, and it's Abbotsford seeking to rectify themselves with a field goal of their own to tie it up. Still in the second, and we don't often show punts, but you have to admire the leg of Charlie May. Taking a Bateman bounce inside the 5, and look at that athleticism. Bateman proving their worth here, not just on special teams, but on defense too, with the nice safety to go up 5-3. Later in the second, it's Bateman D looking sturdy once again with a solid pass rush and a heads-up pick. Great play by the defense. A couple plays later, and the tables have turned. Bateman trying to get the offense going, but it's Abby D getting in on the fun with a pick of their own. Gavin Qatar with some video game-like moves after the catch, gaining an extra 20 yards. Very next play, QB under center, and Abby decide to take a chance deep, and it pays off. Tanner Marquardt on the receiving end of the deep bomb to put Abbotsford up 10-5. Talk about a momentum swing. Third Q now, it's Abbotsford with the ball, once again with another deep ball. This time it's number 11, Holland in the big reception. Before it was all said and done, number 11 gets in on the action. Once again, Abbotsford beats Bateman. Earl Marriott, Eric Hamber, right from the get-go, Eric Hamber with a big gain upfield. Fast forward to the second quarter, and it's the read option written to a T. Owen Dickey drags the defenders to the left before pouring it up the middle. 7-0 Marriott. Dickey under center once again, and this time he would spread the wealth. Alonzo Vergara on the carry, and he would bang it up the middle, sidestepping everyone and nearly getting a touchdown. They would score after that. Hamber looking to do some damage of their own. Number 22 throws a screen and watches his boy do the rest. The run right here is living proof that hard work does pay off, folks. And number 13 beats and bruises his way to the end zone in the fourth, now down 8 points. Hamber looking to get back into this one with the last play of the game from 40 yards out. Despite the great catch, The Hail Mary would fail just a little short. Earl Marriott beats Eric Hamber 14-6. Now here's a look at the rest of the AAA exhibition games. Couple wins for AA schools. Argyle beats West Van, and Holy Cross beats Handsworth. TDBC's AAA top 5 had some changes this week. Mount Doug remains at number 1. Terry Fox moves up to number 2. Van College stays at 3. New West drops to number 4, and Centennial holds on to the number 5 spot. AA regular season scores we go. Seacklem keeps rolling with a win over Bolanis. John Barsby wins big over Frank Hurt. NVSS wins its first conference game this year, and Hugh Boyd gets the W over Windsor. Now here's a look at the scores from AA exhibition play. The BC High School Game of the Week has the Terry Fox Ravens hosting the Mount Bougerie Bears at Percy Perry Stadium this Friday, kickoff at 7. This game will be streamed live on sportscanada.tv.
Now it's time for the BC Football Report. Joining us, as he did last year and going to be the rest of the year, is Dino Jeremia. Dino, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, as always.
Dino, let's get right into it. This past weekend, your team that you're a coach of, Notre Dame Jugglers, took on the New West Hyaks, a team that in, I guess, the rankings would be ranked higher than you guys, but you came in and beat them 44-28. Just tell us about that performance of your team.
Well, it was one of those things that the players came in, were prepared to play, had a few breaks our way, and just rolled from there. And New West scored early, so I think it kind of caused everybody to take a big gulp and say, oh, wow. They came out fast, they can score quick, they've got a lot of great athletes, but really battened down the hatches and had a good effort from all our team in all phases of the game after that.
And how much does it mean, like, for your Notre Dame team? I know you took some losses in the exhibition play. How good is it to beat one of the top teams, for going forward now for the Jugglers?
Oh, it's huge for the confidence. I mean, we had some injuries early, and like you said, started out with a loss against St. Thomas More, but really saw some positive things. Great leadership from Stephen Moretto, the quarterback, and great game from him on both sides of the ball, but really stood out on offense. So it just gives the feeling to the team that, hey, we're in there, we're in the top group, and we can compete with anybody.
And now to the Eastern Conference. I know we talked a bit before the interview about Terry Fox and how much you like them as a football team. They beat Mowat 57-0. Is it easy to say Terry Fox is going to be the team to beat, maybe not just in the Eastern Conference, but maybe in the whole thing?
Yeah, I think they're going to come together again, as they normally do. Physical up front. They've got lots of weapons with Ken Kalongo, Xander Bailey in the backfield, so they can run the ball. And again, like I said, they're big up front, so it's tough to match them on the line of scrimmage. So again, they're gonna be one of those teams that we're talking about well into November. And
then the other teams in the Eastern Conference looks to be stronger than it has in the past. You have Lord Tweedsmuir that beat STM, as STM a great team. Lord Tweedsmuir obviously has been a good team, but that's a statement win for them. And then also Centennial beating Mount Bougerie 28-21. So now you're seeing 4 or 5 of those teams looking to be a part of that Eastern Conference.
Yeah, Lord Tweedsmuir always has some great athletes. I think they're low on numbers. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go through the season, because everybody hits that point in the season where there's some injuries and they have to overcome some adversity. So that'll be interesting to see from Tweedsmuir. Certainly they can compete with anybody on a healthy roster. Very similar team as Centennial. Got some great talent, not sure of their depth, and all those teams, as I mentioned, are going to hit some point in the season where they hit some adversity and have a few injuries, and how are they going to withstand that?
And now looking to this weekend, Centennial plays STM in the East, which looks to be a solid matchup for both teams. And this one looking like, STM coming off a loss. Centennial has won 2 games in a row now. What can you expect from that game?
Well, I think you'll see a lot of the similar stuff from Centennial. They got great athletes, Nick Green, Mo Hassan, a couple of guys that can take the ball and make a difference, make people miss. Nick Green scored a touchdown as well on defense. So I think you're going to see the athletes in Centennial. And STM, they're just one of those teams that they work hard, they're physical. They keep coming at you. So it's going to be an interesting game for both teams to see who comes out on top.
And now to AA, there's a lot of teams in that top 5 that are looking very good. You could say Seaquam, John Barsby, and Hugh Boyd beating Windsor, who were in the championship game last year, 28-14. Who do you like in the AA so far?
I like Seaquam. I really like what they've done. I think they have a lot of depth. They have some great athletes. They've got a good system in play. They've done some really good things in the last few years as they've come up, renewing their program. Jerry Mullis, their head coach, does a good job of getting other people involved, other coaches, good support network. So I see them being as tough as anybody, and you just can't rule out the John Barsby. The Bulldogs on the island there. Rob Stevenson always does a good job. They seem to gain momentum as the season goes on, and I expect them to be, one of those teams with Seaquam that'll be in the playoff hunt.
Well, thanks, Dino. We'll catch up with you again next week. That's the BC High School Report with Dino Jeremia. Week 5 of community football is in the books, and what a great weekend of football it was. We had some hard-fought games, and that is exactly what you want to see out of these kids. 5 weeks in, and we are already seeing some high-level football. Let's take you to some of the highlights from around the BCCFA.
Junior Bantam, Chilliwack Blue versus Chilliwack Red. Chilliwack Blue with the ball and anxious to get on the board first, so why not give it to big Logan Bukwitz? It's men against boys out here as he plows through the defense like it's nobody's business. Chilliwack Blue gets the ball back, and this time they take it through the air. Caleb Spanner throws it into tight coverage, but that's what you can afford to do when you have a stud receiver like Gavin Thomas. And just like that, Chilliwack Blue goes back to the air into tight coverage once again. Ball bounces around like a pinball, but Chilliwack Red lands on the receiving end. DJ Stevens blitzes up the sidelines after a big turnover. And after the last time in the air, Spanner decides to keep it himself. This time, after holding on to the ball tight and shrugging off 3 tackles, this one was all Caleb Spanner. Chilliwack Blue with the ball once again, and this time they would hand it off to Davies Mitchell. And watch out, he steamrolls a red burrito, and look at the blue hairstream in the wind. He would head to the house too, Chili Blue pulling away. Chilliwack Blue with the ball once again, and this time it's Grayson Frick under center. He fakes the handoff and has bigger ideas. He heads to the house once again for Chilliwack Blue. And just to top things off, Chilliwack Blue do a double fake handoff, reverse, as Big Gage O'Neill skips into the end zone. Blue dominating this one 33-0. Now let's take a look at the rest of the scores from Junior Bantam. Coquitlam beats South Delta 49-16. North Delta gets the W over the North Surrey Eagles, and Langley beats the North Surrey Falcons. Time now for some Pee Wee ball. Let's start with the Haka, or something like that. Meadow Ridge sets the tone early. Caleb Gruninger looks like a young Peyton Hillis in his prime, but faster. He bursts up the gut like a man on the mission, while the Chilliwack defenders could only take a blurry picture. Next quarter, it's hard to believe Meadow Ridge has somebody even faster out of the backfield, but that's the case with Jacob Brass. He makes everyone look like they are running in slow motion as he pulls Meadow Ridge ahead by 2 scores. But not so fast. Chilliwack Blue works the QB sneak to perfection on the goal line, with Lucas Fever fearlessly diving it into the end zone. And what's this? Lucas Fever has an arm too. Gutsy play thrown into a quadruple coverage, but his receiver makes the reception look easy. Meadow Ridge gets the ball back though, and it's Gruninger once again. And if this guy was a Subway sandwich, he'd be a cold cut combo. Look at those amazing cuts in the open field. Gallup gets his 2nd touchdown of the day for Meadow Ridge. Now Chilliwack's turn to spice things up on a reverse toss sweep. Nice run by Kenyon Reed there. Meadow Ridge would make a change at QB. The QB intends to throw it to an other number 1, but oops, Wyatt Stobbs picks it off. Meadow Ridge 20, Chilliwack Giant 6. Pee Wee game number 2, and things get crazy right out of the gate. Literally. Everyone gets pumped up in their own ways before the game. Abby Black gets things started. Number 19 takes the ball at the backfield, narrowly misses his defender, and he's off to the races like Seabiscuit. No one is catching him as Abby goes up early. Abby Black goes back to work. This time it's number 12, taking it, and he's got bigger things on his mind. Seamlessly switching the ball from arm to arm like it's nothing. He too would be destined for the promised land. Ensuing kickoff, we've got ourselves a bit of a squib kick. Number 1 picks it up for Chilliwack Red, and watch out. Wait, he avoids a couple more big tackles and takes off right down the sideline. Surely he's going to get taken down, but he avoids a couple more would-be tacklers before finally getting hauled down. Number 82 has all day in the pocket as he throws a wobbly ball right in the hands of Chilliwack number 81. Great defensive play there, but with further ado, Abbotsford would get the ball back and they hand it back to number 19. And this guy has got the eye of the tiger, cutting through the secondary like warm butter for a second touchdown of the day. Chilliwack Red gets the ball back and number 25 has red in his eyes. He makes a beautiful cut inside, throwing off the Abbotsford linebackers and busts through the seam for a solid gain of 17. But Abbotsford Black would get the ball back, and guess what the game plan is? That's right, number 19 gets the ball back, and let's just count all the tackles he slips out of. His third of the day, as Abbotsford will go on to win this one. Now let's take a look at the rest of the scores from Pee Wee. To midget ball scores we go. North Langley beats Coquitlam. Langley gets the win over the Warriors 10-0, and North Surrey rolls over Victoria 37-8. Now let's take a look at the midget standings through 5 games. Here's a look at the scores from Bantam. Now let's take a look at the Bantam standings through 5 weeks. UBC played host to the Manitoba Bisons on Friday night at Thunderbirds Stadium. Both teams entered the game 2-2. With the Canada West standings so close, this game was a must-win for both teams. Both teams must have got the memo because this game turned out to be an instant classic. UBC Manitoba, fast forward to the second Q. UBC down 4. Michael O'Connor drops back and throws one up into heavy coverage, but Travell Pinto is able to secure it for the Birds, putting them back ahead. Fourth quarter now, UBC down a touchdown. Well, that was before Ben Cummings got his hand on the rock and bursts outside to tie the ball game up at 30s. Later on, this game already deep into overtime. Brad Mikolev showing off his leg from distance and putting UBC on the hot seat. Last chance for UBC in an effort to get the W in OT. Doesn't get any better than that. O'Connor from the 35-yard line, and he throws a little bubble screen to Travell Pinto, and Pinto does the rest, trouncing all the way in for the final score of the game. UBC win a massive game against Manitoba Bisons, 53-50, and for the first time since week 1, the Birds go back above 500 to 3-2. The star of the game has to be Travell Pinto. Not only did Pinto have 10 receptions, 245 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns, he also had a pick on defense. UBC will get the turkey break off, but they'll be back in action next week for another must-win game, this time traveling to Saskatoon to play the U of S Huskies. It's time now for the UBC report with Jim Mullen. Jim, like the hoodie.
Well, yeah, you know, I wash up pretty well when I jump into the suit, but I'm going to represent.
Well, let's get right into the game over the weekend. UBC playing Manitoba to 53-50 win, quadruple overtime, an instant classic.
Well, a crazy game, a crazy overtime, a sloppy start to this game, though, I think by both teams. Manitoba held a narrow lead at halftime, but the thing that really got UBC started was their running game at the beginning of the second half. Obviously, they saw some sort of wrinkle in the Manitoba defense, and they started to use Ben Cummings at running back. This would be a really good turn of events for the Thunderbirds if they can finally settle on a lead running back. They've had Cummings in there, they've had Liam Mahara in there, they've had Corey Nagata in there, but if they can go to one and get a lot of reps with the guy, then they can get him going. And it was positive to see that the running game set up opportunity for them because they've been lagging in the bottom 3 in the nation when it comes to rushing yards.
Yeah, Cummings rushing for 246 yards in that game. Another great performance. You got to go to Pinto, 11 receptions, 245 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and also had an interception on defense.
That's crazy stuff, isn't
unbelievable.
it? Unbelievable. We said it on the Crown Countdown U show last week that's leather helmet, single face bar stuff when a player is playing both ways. And we've talked a lot about Noah Picton over in Regina being a leader for the Heck Creighton Award, which is the top award in Canada. you got to consider Travell Pinto in that discussion at this point. Matter of fact, it's too bad that only one guy can come out of Western Canada as the nominee, because this guy is doing it on both sides of the football. That 35-yard run at the end of overtime for the winning points was a thing of beauty. The way he secured the football and then took off down the sidelines. The great thing about this kid is not just his athleticism, but his endurance as well, and his attitude about being out there all the time. The biggest minus about Travell Pinto playing both ways is that he can't stay out there for special teams, because he's a great returner too.
And would you say, when was the last time you've seen a player like that in the CIS or Can West, like that has been dominant both sides of the ball?
Well, the one guy that comes to mind, and we mentioned this last week too as a reference, is Lou Delorier, the former head coach of the UBC Thunderbirds about a decade ago, and he was inducted into the BC Football Hall of Fame. He's always in the discussion as one of the amateurs, actually, for the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. But and this speaks to Pinto's ability to maybe get the Heck Creighton Award, is that with Lou Delorier, he always bounces around the middle of the voting with the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. And that's because he wasn't overwhelmingly good as an offensive player. He was a pretty good special teamer, and he was a great defensive player. He did all three. Sometimes he'd do special teams too. He'd never leave the field. He was a great returner. He led the UBC Thunderbirds and the Canada West in return yards in a season, and was at the top of the charts for interceptions. So Lou Delorier is the last guy to do that. The year was 1982. This stuff isn't supposed to happen these days with a guy like Pinto.
And getting back to the game, you saw UBC's offense put a lot of points up, and their defense had some stops, but is this what we're going to have to see moving forward? Is the offense is going to have to put up these type of yards to kind of help that defense out?
I think the defense is slowly coming around from all of their losses that they had to sustain in the offseason. Speaking of Pinto and the defense, it's a little discouraging that, they've got three of their best offensive players playing on defense, especially when you look at Lee and Blackwell on the corners. Really, there should be an offensive role for these guys, but considering that Blake Nill wants to go with quality over quantity when it comes to recruiting, he's going to take that risk and going to take that gamble that having a short roster is going to pay off for him. So I think the defense is coming around. I think really the main concern for this team was the offense, whether or not it would come around, because it was pretty anemic there for a while. It went over 5 quarters without scoring a touchdown, which is surprising considering who's at quarterback with Michael O'Connor and some of those receivers that he has to work with.
And now looking to this weekend, UBC will travel to Saskatoon to play the Huskies. The Huskies coming off a loss, the game that you called at the new Mosaic Stadium against Regina. They're 2-3, UBC 3-2. This has got to be another must-win for obviously UBC again, and also Saskatchewan.
Well, it's a big plus for the Thunderbirds that they have the Turkey week off before they head over to Saskatoon, because with that short roster, they can get healthy in a few spots. So that's a huge plus timing-wise for them. This is a critical game more for the Saskatchewan Huskies than it is for the UBC Thunderbirds at this point, because with a loss to UBC, I think they're essentially out of the running. They lost the tiebreaker to Manitoba. They only play Manitoba once this year, and they only get one shot at the UBC Thunderbirds. So if Saskatchewan were to close strong and find themselves in a 3-way tie, they're going to lose every tiebreaker that's known out there in the Canada West. For UBC, they can drive a dagger into Saskatchewan and essentially secure themselves a playoff spot if they play solid. But then again, last 2 games against first place Regina and Calgary, who are tied for Regina for first place, but Regina holds the season series on those 2. So they need this win badly too against the Saskatchewan Huskies, because they're going to face a pair of 4-1 teams to close out the season.
Well, UBC in a week and a half will travel to Saskatchewan to play the 2-3 Saskatchewan Huskies. Thanks, Jim. That's the UBC Report with Jim Mullen. The BCFC regular season is over this past weekend. Each team played their final game of the season. BCFC individual records were broken, and the Langley Rams traveled to Kelowna to take on the Okanagan Sun with a home field playoff game on the line.
After losing their last 3 games, the Okanagan Sun came to play at home against the Rams with the 2nd seed in the BCFC on the line. The Sun were led by Foster Martins, who had a great game throwing for 264 yards and 3 touchdowns. 1 to Rashawn Simonize and 2 to Liam Wisher. The Sun over the Rams 44-24. With the win, the Sun finished the season at 7-3. They will host the Langley Rams at home in a week and a half in the Cullen Cup semifinals. The Langley Rams finished the season at 6-4. The VI Raiders went into Chilliwack and beat the Valley Huskers 37-14. Nathan Berg ran all over the Huskers, finishing with 181 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns. D-Rod also came to play, hauling in 11 catches for 191 yards and a touchdown. The Raiders finished the season at 5-4-1. They booked themselves a semifinal matchup against the first-place West Shore Rebels in Langford after the turkey break. The Valley Huskers finished their season without a win at 0-10. The Rebels finished their season off with another win, this time over the Kamloops Broncos 34-25. Jamel Lyles ran for 158 yards en route to breaking former VI Raider Andrew Harris's BCFC single-season rushing record with 1,604 yards this season. West Shore finishes the season at 8-1-1, good for top spot in the BCFC heading into the playoffs. They will host the VI Raiders in one of the Cullen Cup semifinals when the playoffs start after Thanksgiving. The Kamloops Broncos finished the season at 2-8. Broncos Jordan Ango broke a record of his own. His 992 kick return yards this season is a new single-season BCFC record. Here's a look at the final standings for the BCFC. The playoffs are set. The West Shore Rebels will host the VI Raiders in Langford Saturday, October 15th. Game starts at 7. And the Okanagan Sun will host the Langley Rams in Kelowna Sunday, October 16th at 1 p.m. The BCFC's Offensive Player of the Week is VI Raiders receiver Dustin Rodriguez. D-Rod had 11 receptions for 191 yards and a touchdown in a win over Valley. With the big game, Dustin finished the season as BCFC's leader in receiving yards. The BCFC Defensive Player of the Week is Okanagan Sun linebacker Lane Hall. This is Hall's 2nd time being named Defensive Player of the Week. He had 3 tackles, 1 sack, and a forced fumble in a win over the Langley Rams. The BCFC Special Teams Player of the Week is Kamloops Broncos kick returner Jordan Ango. Jordan, this past weekend against the West Shore Rebels, broke the BCFC's single-season record for most kick return yards in a single season with 992 yards.
That does it for Touchdown BC. Thanks for watching. Come back next week because we will preview the 2 semifinal matchups in the BCFC, recap Week 3 of high school conference play, and UBC travels to Saskatchewan for another must-win game. We'll see you next week.
Touchdown BC is sponsored by the Robertson Braun Group, Remax Kelowna. Thinking real estate in Kelowna? Think Blake Roberts and Marlene Braun. For more information, call 250-212-2888 or 250-878-5242.
Touchdown BC is also sponsored by Subway and the Subway Bowl.